In this video, we'll learn how to create a bass line by learning a little bit about chords and using the information that we already know about notes. We'll also learn how to choose bass instruments and where to place these notes. Stay tuned. In this project, you're going to notice a second orange track. The first one represents the sections of the song, and the second represents the chords for the song. Sometimes Soundtrap messes up the text of the regions, but we can fix this by zooming in and out vertically. So sometimes you might see it like this, and then you actually can't see what the region's called. So if you just zoom out vertically, then it pops back up. You're going to need to create drums as well. So I'm going to quickly create a single kick and snare drum pattern. Just go to drums and bass, and we'll call this kick and set this to our dark pink color. And then we'll create a second track that will be called snare. And we'll do the same thing with that, set that to our dark pink color. Let's create some regions, make them 4 bars long. And I already have my cycle region set to 4 bars. And just remember, you drag at the bottom, not the top. Okay, the top will cycle the section. Okay, so now that we have that set up, let's set up some patterns for this. So I'll start with the snare. And remember, the snare just goes on 2 and 4 for every single bar. So 2 and 4 and 2 and 4. And I think I missed one of the bars. It's bar 13, 2 and 4. And for the kick, I'm just going to keep it really simple. And I'll just use the same pattern. Okay. And I'll make this a 2-bar pattern. I'll copy and paste it, and then I'll merge everything together. Okay, so here's what our drums sound like. Just soloed. Okay, good. I'll let you hear it with the track itself.
You're looking at me and I can't help stare. Right there, right there. I'm coming for you, so be patient, dear. Just stay right there.
Okay, so pretty good. And I'll extend this because the chorus goes all the way till here, so we'll make this 8 bars long. And there we go, we're done the kick and snare. Okay, let's create another track. And this is going to be our bass track, so it's going to be under the guitar and bass category. And we won't actually give this a name, but we will give it a color, and the color will be this dark blue color. We'll create a region here. We'll make it 4 bars long. And then at the bottom, we're gonna go to instrument, and we're gonna actually choose our instrument, because right now it's on guitar, and we want it to be on bass. We can see all these bass categories. There's bass, bass acoustic, bass electric. The ones that we're going to focus on will be bass kick and bass synth. So because this is the chorus, I'm going to use an 808, and we can basically play or sample these 808s before we choose one. So hopefully you hear how low that sounds. This will be very important later on. Super low. Now this one, if you don't have good quality headphones or you're using bad speakers, you might not even hear this one. That one sounds kind of weird. Very punchy. I'm going to go with this one. Okay, to make this easier for us to see, let's scroll up and let's take the chords track, which is going to be really important for us to use, and we're going to drag it down just by clicking and dragging. We're going to drag it right above our 808 track. And this is a pretty long title, so I'll just go and rename this as 808. Okay, let's zoom in so that we can see what the chords are. So I'm going to do a horizontal zoom, and then we should be able to see what these regions are called. So the first chord is called A minor. The M beside the A means minor. It should really be lowercase, but Soundtrap only allows uppercase letters in these regions for some reason. The next chord is G major. If the chord doesn't have a M beside it, then it's a major chord. And we'll talk about this more later. Then we have F major, and lastly we have C major. And then the pattern repeats itself. A minor, G major, F major, C major. A minor, G major, F major, C major. Okay, and then it repeats over and over and over for every section. All right, so you want to make sure that you're on the piano roll. And we also want to make sure that snap to grid is turned on and that we're on a 16th note grid pattern. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit more. So creating bass notes is both easy and tricky. Let me explain. It's easy because the bass note that we choose is based on the letter of the chord at that time. So this is A minor, so our bass note will be A. So let's use our pencil tool by holding Option or Alt, and I'm going to find A. If I click on the note and hold, it will tell me what the letter is. So it's telling me that it's A3. The tricky portion is which A do we choose? We have A3 here, but if I drag this up, we get A4. And I can drag it up even more to get A5, and so on and so forth. Now, this is going to be way too high for our bass note. So how do we know what's low enough? Well, we can go to Instrument and back to this instrument chooser and press the play button. Listen how it sounds. So we want to choose a bass note that's roughly around that area. Okay, let's go back to piano roll. So that sounds much higher. I'll drag it down. Let's check this A. So A3 seems still a little bit too high. Let's check, let's compare. It's the same one actually. So once you found kind of where the bass should be, this one works, so A2 is good. Let's try A1 as well. That's really low. That's nice and low, still good. The issue that we don't want is we don't want it to be too high because then it doesn't sound like a bass, and we don't want it to be too low because then it gets distorted. So I'm going to bring this one lower and you're going to see what it sounds like to be distorted. Okay, it's getting pretty distorted. You might not even be able to hear that. Okay, now it's really distorted. So A2 for this instrument, A1 or A2 seems to work. I'm going to use A2. So now we want to make sure that the bass note is long enough. So I'm going to move the playhead to where the next chord starts. It starts right here. It's going to be G major. And I'm going to shorten this note by clicking on the end of it and bringing it in. So now we know our next chord is G. So that means our bass note's going to be G. So I'm going to find G, which is right here. And you can drag the note sideways as well. And it ends right here. So I'm going to drag it out to there. Our next chord is F. This is why you need to know your notes. And that chord ends right there. So I'll stop it there. And then our last chord is C major. So our bass note's going to be a C. You could use C2. You could technically use C3. I think C2 sounds nice and low, so I'll stick with that. Okay, so let's hear what it sounds like just by itself. Okay, so that sounds great. And then it's going to repeat. So I can just go and copy these right to this region, copy and paste. And now our bass line is done. Let's hear what it sounds like with just the drums. Okay, good. Let's hear it with the whole thing now.
You're looking at me and I can't help stare. Right there, right there. I'm coming for you, so be patient, dear. Just stay right there.
Good. Now, what would it sound like if we chose the wrong bass notes? So I'm gonna actually change the beginning. I'm gonna mess up the notes. This happens quite frequently. So I want you to compare what these ones sound like versus what the right ones sound like. Take a listen. Okay, and I'll just solo a couple instruments so that we can really hear it clearly. I'll solo the acapella. I'll solo worm synth. Actually, that's not good enough. Let's solo the 5-voice saw, and then we'll also solo the 808. So here we go. So this is what it should sound like.
I'm coming for you, so be patient, dear, just stay right there. You're looking at me and I can't help stare. Right there, right there.
So I hope you heard that. It sounds like something is off, almost like there's a bad taste in your mouth. Okay, so I'll play it one more time. Here's what it should sound like.
I'm coming for you, so be patient, dear.
And I'll get rid of the vocals that might be distracting you a little bit. That sounds absolutely horrible. Okay, let's fix those notes so that they go back. Okay, that's fixed. So the second half of the chorus is exactly the same, so we can just click on this and just copy that right over, and then we're done the chorus. So I hope you learned a lot in this video. Stay tuned for the next one.